New Mexico Crime Files, a deep dive into the archives, shocking and notorious cases, the arrests and what led to them, and what happened to the suspect. Here are your hosts, Dean Staley and Jessica Garate. New Mexico Crime Files is sponsored by Medrano Struck Law Firm.
Hello and welcome everyone to our very first episode of New Mexico Crime Files. I'm Dean Staley, evening anchor for KRQE News 13 with my co-anchor, Jessica Garate.
And it is a pleasure being here, and welcome to all of our listeners and viewers. As journalists who cover local news all across New Mexico, crime is a very important part of our coverage. Our viewers, they want to know who's committing crimes in their neighborhood, what type of crimes are being committed, and what the justice system, the cops, and the courts are doing to fight crime.
That's right. And here on New Mexico Crime Files, we're going to be covering all kinds of crimes. Some of them are those crazy, just shocking crimes that come out of nowhere where you have a mass murder, a mass shooting. But we are also going to be covering some of the more mundane crimes that seem like almost like theft and car theft and those kinds of things. Those seem like lesser crimes, but they really add up. And those are some of the crimes that affect our viewers most in terms of, if your car gets stolen or if you're in the store and you see someone shoplifting sort of brazenly. So we will be looking at those crimes as well.
And I think, too, in this episode, you'll see where the frustration comes from the public. These cases going through the courts, these people getting in trouble so many times and then being let back out.
Yeah, we'll take a deep dive into those crimes. But to start, we're going to look very closely at one of those shocking crimes. This is from 2017, a 21-year-old man in northern New Mexico, north of Espanola, Damian Herrera, who shot 3 members of his family and a couple of other people as well.
And it was really a shocking case and really had our entire state on edges. Police were trying to track him down. He's now known as a convicted mass murderer, but we got firsthand look at how dangerous he could be. When he tried to escape from jail, just being a month in jail, he already tried to escape, and how he was able to do that really stood out, and we had the video of it. So let's take a look at our report from July of 2017.
We're seeing how an accused mass murderer tricked a jail guard, then attacked another. Now officials in Rio Arriba County are trying to get Damian Herrera moved to another jail. News 13's Madeline Schmidt is here with the video. Madeline?
Yeah, well, Jessica, captured on surveillance video in the jail, it's clear Damian Herrera had a plan. He knew how to dupe the guard into going into his cell, then went right for his weapon of choice to attack another guard, and that was a metal flashlight.
There's no audio, but the video says plenty. On the 15th, Damian Herrera, the man accused of gunning down his stepdad, mom, and brother, then 2 strangers in northern New Mexico, lashed out at jail guards. You'll recall the accused murderer was captured after an hours-long manhunt following the killings back in June.
Stop it there! Stop right there! Hands up!
Since then, he's been at the Rio Arriba County Jail in Tierra Amarilla. But soon, Herrera could be in another correctional facility. It's because of this. Herrera is out of his cell, wandering around shirtless on an hour-long break. What you can't hear is Herrera telling the guard his sink was running and it would not stop. The guard goes in to check it out. Herrera slams the door behind him. Then he goes right for a flashlight tucked under the desk before hiding around a corner. By now, the guard in Herrera's cell has called for help. So when this other guard walks by, he makes his move. The guard uses a chair to defend himself as Herrera swings again and again. Then an EMT jumps in to help, followed by another guard. They all struggle with Herrera for several minutes before he's finally subdued and put in a restraining chair. Again, there's no audio, but Herrera appears to be wailing alone in the hallway for several minutes afterwards.
And according to documents from the jail, a few days before this incident, guards found him wandering around the jail kitchen where he was not supposed to be while out on another break from his cell. Jessica, back to you.
All right, thank you, Madeline. Rio Arriba County's jail administrator says there is an internal investigation into both the incidents.
Dean, pretty shocking to see how he tried to manipulate those guards in that video and almost escaped.
And one of the real takeaways is, wow, this is how they're handling prisoners. I think a lot of our viewers looked at that and said, what's going on? This is the Rio Arriba County Jail. And treating this guy like he was a petty thief or something, not someone who you would think, oh my God, this is a mass murderer. We should really have this place locked down.
Now, it did lead to him being transferred from the Rio Arriba jail to a very high-risk facility, but they would not give us the location on where they ended up taking him. And then we followed this case for many years because his trial kept getting continued because they kept checking his competency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's one of the ones that lingered in the court system because it was an issue of competency. And part of that is because you have this family in northern New Mexico, well-liked in the community, no previous problems, and then suddenly someone does something like this. So very often that's the case where they look at it and they say, well, there's something wrong with Damian Herrera potentially in terms of just mental health. Can we try him? So that did take a long time. And
then it was also, on the other hand, you had two innocent people who were also murdered as he tried to get away. They were waiting for justice. And so it just felt like it was just taking quite a while. But in 2020, he was finally deemed competent to stand trial, which started in July. His trial started in July of 2021. And it was really emotional. And one thing that really stood out was his sister who saw her brother murder their family.
Yeah, and understand, this is the crime. This man shot to death his 49-year-old mother. He also shot to death his stepfather, and it came out in the trial that in both cases, he had a gun to their head. It was sort of an execution with people pleading, please, his brother pleading, please don't do it. And he also shot to death his 20-year-old brother, Brendan, as well.
So we want to take a listen to the sister who was there when he murdered his family.
This is from the trial.
I don't know how Damian got Brendan on his knees. And a shot went straight to him here. And he went purple. And my mom came running for my dad and got Brendan and was asking Damian why he did it, what was wrong with him, and telling him not to do it to her.
Dean, that was just like a very pivotal point in that trial, really stood out to those jurors, and really just how awful for his sister to stand trial and have to describe all of that.
Yeah, just a punishing moment for her to have to talk about what happened in those moments. We should also note that there were two other people killed. For anyone who was following the story, after Herrera shot and killed his mother, stepfather, and his brother, he went on the lam and he shot to death a man in Abiquiu, 59-year-old man in Abiquiu who was just filling up with gas, and shot him numerous times in the back. So that was a fourth murder. And then the fifth murder happens when he's on the run still, and a man in Taos County pulls over because Herrera has run out of gas, and this poor man pulls over to help him and ends up getting shot to death as well. So the original trial landed Herrera with 4 life sentences for those cases, both in his hometown and then also in Abiquiu, but those were in Rio Arriba County, as opposed to the other murder that was in Taos County.
In Taos. So he was convicted. He got 4 life sentences for those 4 lives in Rio Arriba County, and then the Taos trial was separate.
Right.
Where he got a 5th life sentence.
So he is serving, I think it's 5 life sentences plus 9 years or something like that. Yeah. So one of those horrible crimes that shocks everyone. The next crime that we're going to cover is not quite one of those crimes, but imagine driving down the highway anywhere in New Mexico and you see state police and sheriff's deputies, high-speed chase, shooting with the suspect back and forth as this is happening. This is our next story.
The video is very jarring. You'll want to stay around and see it. You just see cops just opening fire while they're driving, and this car is completely out of control.
And I think it shocked a lot of us in the newsroom when you saw the New Mexico State police officer, or I think it might have been a sheriff's deputy with his AR-15 on his dashboard, shooting through his own window. Yeah, his own windshield at the suspects in this case. Video you just have to see, and we'll have that when we come back.
So this next story was a crazy chase on a New Mexico highway after a brazen robbery from a Starbucks drive-thru. Eventually, shots are being fired. They're trying to stop and deputies are trying to do everything to stop this car, and it has a pretty bad ending.
And just imagine being on the highway and being anywhere near this shootout. This is a high-speed chase that lasted over 100 miles, and we had more than 100 rounds fired.
It involved Santa Fe deputies and New Mexico State Police returning fire, trying to stop Jacob Montaya, who was eventually sentenced for his crime this last April. more than 3 years after being arrested. News 13's Kim Bias got footage from police showing exactly what happened that day back in 2021.
We are seeing for ourselves how a high-speed police shootout played out last month. It started with an armed robbery in Santa Fe. It ended in Torrance County. The video shows officers having to return fire through their own windshields as the suspects shoot at them going 100 miles per hour. It started at a Starbucks drive-thru November 26th on St. Francis Drive in Santa Fe. A female driver placed an order, then pulled a gun and demanded money. You can see the green laser sight. After she receives the cash, she speeds off. Santa Fe County deputies catch up with the vehicle and the chase begins. It's then that it becomes clear that that female suspect, later identified as Christine Dominguez, had switched seats with a man. And Dominguez begins to open fire from the passenger seat. State police officers and deputies return fire, some of them shooting through their own windshields. The chase reaches speeds of 100 miles per hour. One deputy tells the other officers over the radio they need to open fire.
On the last round, citizens were passing. Citizens were passing him when he fired at me, putting them in danger as well. He does not have due regard for the public as a danger.
Christine Dominguez then takes a new position and continues shooting.
Vehicle shooting from the back window now. He's shooting from the back window. Vehicle almost 45 now. Returning fire.
The half-hour chase then has a dramatic ending.
Multiple shots fired, multiple shots fired, still shooting us from the back window. Turning fire. Back window. Turning fire. Now we need some more 223 rounds up here. The vehicle's about 45 out. Stand by. Vehicle is now on the wrong side of 285. 285. Oh, wait, now he's back over. Okay, he's about 45 down, 45 down. Family stop, family stop.
The chase ended on US 285 near Klein's Corners. SWAT arrived and began negotiating with Dominguez and the man, now identified as Jacob Montaya, with no word until Montaya suddenly appeared.
Be advised, he is standing up and he's crawling to us now.
Montaya gave himself up, suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. Christine Dominguez found dead in the back seat. Montoya currently has 5 felony cases against him, including previous charges of fleeing from officers. Christine Dominguez had several warrants for drug possession and robbery. One state police officer says they went through several clips each, adding up to more than 100 shots.
So just this, for me, is like a Bonnie and Clyde story, right? This
really
what
is.
It feels like.
Yeah.
You've got a boyfriend, girlfriend in the car with a shootout with police. This was just crazy. The other crazy part of it was that it took more than 3 years to sentence Montoya in this case. His girlfriend died in the shootout, right, Dominguez, and it took a long time to settle this case.
It really did. So what happens is first there was a move for Montoya's lawyers. They wanted to change the venue from Torrance County to Bernalillo, which was eventually granted because this was such a high-profile case and everyone had seen that video. So that happened in early December of 2021. Then January comes, the charges were dismissed against Montoya, so investigators could figure out who was actually shooting at police.
Right. You've got new investigators, new prosecutors taking over the case saying, okay, we need to figure this out. And they're trying to figure out who shot. Was it Dominguez? Was it Montoya? And it turned out ultimately both of them had shot at the police who were chasing them, right?
So they determined it was both of them. And then February comes around. Montoya was facing 24 charges, including armed robbery, fleeing from police, and just a slew of other charges as well.
And ultimately, of 24 charges, and I think this is one of those things that the public can't believe sometimes, 24 charges, you have the robbery at the Starbucks, you have the shootout, you have the high-speed chase. 23 of those go away because he takes a plea deal, and he gets 5 years and 8 months on a single charge, which was intent to commit violent felony on a peace officer. So almost 6 years for all of that mayhem that we saw.
That was the plea deal he took, and just causing all of those scary moments for other drivers, everything, and those other 23 charges get dropped. He was sentenced again to 5 years and 8 months behind bars.
One of those times, I think, when people see that, everyone feels a little less safe that people like that are running around committing these kinds of crimes. So our next crime that we're going to take a deep dive into is really just about a car thief who was, I think, dealing in drugs as well. And so he had numerous charges, but it's really about how he popped off in court.
It really is. He throws a tantrum because he's finally getting punished. He had been given so many different breaks, which is also frustrating in this case. And we're going to show that to you next.
New Mexico Crime Files is sponsored by Medrano Struck Law Firm, New Mexico's trusted personal injury attorneys with nearly 40 years of combined experience, fighting for the justice and compensation you deserve. Call 505-217-2200 or visit MedranoStruckLaw.com today. Let's get back to New Mexico Crime Files.
All right, Jess, this next crime is one that you and I cover very often, these types of crimes where you have a single human being that is so involved in a repeated type of crime. And it's not one of these crazy violent, crimes where they're out shooting people or killing family members. This is someone who is a dedicated car thief. Christopher Dominguez, he was caught trying to steal a bait car. He'd been caught smuggling drugs into rehab at one point in his criminal career, caught violating his probation. And he was also sent to drug court, which is another break for one of these guys, right? Where the court says, okay, we'll give you a break. We'll send you to drug court. Then during drug court, he gets tested for drugs and fails, right?
This is a guy who was given supervised probation 5 different times and was still just constantly getting in trouble over and over again. And then when a judge finally says enough is enough, he had some choice words for her.
And even then, the judge was giving him a break. Instead of 10 years, it was getting 6.5. And his defense attorney, as you'll see in this story, is pleading, saying, hey, can he get out now to just show you that he could be a better person? The judge says, I'm sorry, we're not doing that. And then
this is what he had to say. So this is News 13's Brianna Gallegos. She covered the incident during that probation violation hearing. This report from 2017.
Man who's a poster child for so many of Albuquerque's problems was back in court today begging for another last chance.
This time a judge said no, and that triggered an outburst from the career criminal. A profane outburst that could have cost him another year behind bars. Here's News 13's Brianna Gallegos with the courtroom video. Brianna?
Dean and Jessica, Christopher Dominguez is a thief that just can't stay out of other people's cars. Today, he tried to sweet talk a judge into cutting his sentence. When she didn't, Dominguez was not playing nice guy. Christopher Dominguez is used to getting breaks, but his luck ran out today. Today, Dominguez stood beside his attorney in Albuquerque's district court, explaining to Judge Cristina Jaramillo why she should let him out of prison.
He'd like a chance to prove that to you by coming back out onto a short term of probation.
This isn't the first time Dominguez has asked for a break.
I know we've heard the words last chance before, but that's what I'm asking for this time, is just one final and truly last chance.
That was back in March, with too many car thefts to count, including trying to steal a bait car, smuggling drugs into rehab, and violating probation. Dominguez could have been facing a decade in prison, but he got 6.5 years.
He was terminated from his recovery after numerous non-compliances.
Dominguez argues he's working on changing his life.
I want to change my old way of living and have a promising future. Thank you for your time, Your Honor. Respectfully, Christopher Dominguez.
Judge Jaramillo told Dominguez he already caught a break when she gave him 6.5 years, and she wasn't budging today.
Given a deal, I think 6.5 years for this many cases is a great deal, and that's the benefits you're getting out of it. So take advantage of it. Good luck. Thank you.
Dominguez was less than thrilled. The judge could have held Dominguez in contempt of court and added a year to his sentence for that outburst today. No word tonight if she will. Back to you.
All right, thank you, Brianna. Initially, Dominguez didn't have to serve time. Judge Jewell sentenced him to drug court, but he failed drug test and didn't do his mandatory community service.
Dean, as you could see, I was much younger in those videos.
I don't know what you're talking about, Jess.
Years ago.
Who were those people?
But this is how long this case has been going on. This case has still been going on. This was many years ago.
Yeah.
Dominguez, he pled not guilty to a stolen vehicle charge in 5 cases in September of 2015. So this is almost 10 years ago. This is 10 years ago.
Way back.
By January 2016, he pled no contest to 6 stolen car charges in all 5 cases. That following March, he was sentenced to 5 years of supervised probation and completion of a substance abuse recovery program. No surprise, 6 months later, he had already violated his probation by testing positive for drugs and being in contact with another felon. By 2016, the court ordered his probation to be reinstated. And I also have to say, this guy has a lot of guts going after the judge in a courtroom.
Yeah, I also want to say, our viewers, when they see a story like this, are just, you just can't believe the frustration and this sort of like, what does it take to put someone like this behind bars? But I also want to say, this man is clearly someone dealing with addiction, right? And until he can get off of the addiction, he's going to land back in the system. And given all the opportunities, drug court, he had all sorts of opportunities. He was in rehab. He just couldn't beat that addiction, this part of his life. And as long as that was, who he was someone who was addicted, I think that was the kind of behavior you're going to see. So that's tough too, because I don't think we have obvious solutions to that. When you offer people help and rehab and that doesn't work, then what?
And just to point out, for this legislative session, this is something that lawmakers are really taking a look at and saying, hey, should we just be keeping these people, making them get treatment, making them, keeping them, and you can't just go to these places and not enough is enough. Let's see what we need to do to fix these kind of cases and these kind of suspects in these cases.
Yeah, what is the point of turning someone who is drug addicted back onto the streets and just hoping they'll behave? Right. So, yeah, tough one.
His case kept going on. I mean, he roughly...
Yeah, give us the rest of it, Jess. We're not done here.
Yeah, we could be here for a while.
But
I'll sum some of it up.
Yeah.
I mean, this goes all the way up until, this has been 10 years of dealing with this man. He violated his probation again a month later in 2016, testing positive for meth 3 times. And then this led to him being taken out of the drug recovery program and being sentenced to nearly 5.5 years behind bars. Of course, by December 2022, he was back on the streets, arrested again after running from police in a stolen car. 2023, pled guilty to numerous charges in that case, sentenced to a year behind bars and 6.5 years of supervised probation.
Right.
And no big surprises here. In May of 2024, he violated his probation by having drugs and had his probation reinstated.
And Jess, you're absolutely right. This is one of the things that the legislature, I think, is looking at, saying, okay, we've got to come up with, even though it's not often a violent offense, there's so much mayhem that's created that you have to figure out a way to keep this person behind bars.
This is 10 years of this man causing problems.
Yeah. So that's it. That's our first episode of New Mexico Crime Files. We are so glad that you spent some time with us.
And thank you so much to our listeners, our viewers. We appreciate it.
We'll see you next time.